Internet, welcome to another episode of Left Hand Reviews, and today we're going to take a look at the game GOSU, or is it GOSU? It looks like it should be GOSU, but it stands for Goblin Supremacy, so maybe it's GOSU. But anyway, GOSU was released in 2010 by Moonster Games and designed by Kim Sato. It plays in about 30 to 45 minutes with 2 to 4 players. Now really this is a 2-player game, but there are rules that you can download online to make it into a 4-player game. Another great thing about GOSU is that you can play it online on BoardGameArena.com. So that's a great way to try it out after you watch the video review here and see if it's something you may want to pick up. Now in GOSU, you are basically creating your own goblin army to fight against your opponent's goblin army. And at the end of each game round, each goblin army is going to see who is strongest, and the strongest will generally win 1 victory point. The first player to 3 total victory points will be the winner. So this is primarily a card-driven game, and there's just a couple tokens. So let's dive into it, and I'll show you how it plays. GOSU comes in a rather small box, and that's really all that's needed because it's only cards. The first thing that you're going to notice is the artwork in this game is absolutely phenomenal. It's probably some of my favorite artwork I have ever seen in a game of this type. And so you can see on the side it has the name of the game and the publisher, Moonster Games. Then inside you're going to have the rulebook here. The rulebook is approximately 24 pages, but don't let that fool you. I mean, it's very, very straightforward. There's not a lot of text. There's plenty of pictures and flavor text. And the rulebook is actually a really fun read-through because it's written in the from the perspective of this ancient goblin, this little ancient goblin guy who's teaching you how to play the game. Unfortunately, the rulebook is a fun, easy read-through the first time around, and it'll make you laugh. But if you need to go back and reference a couple rules, it's actually pretty terrible. And there's little things in there when you're first learning the game that you're going to forget, and you won't realize until you read through the rules again, and that is kind of annoying. But like I've said in previous reviews, talking about rule books, you can have it one way or the other. You can have the thing read like a dictionary, like a war game, or you can have it be a fun read, but a little bit harder to reference. But I think they are fine with the way this is, because 1 or 2 reads through, and then you play it once or twice, it's going to become second nature, and you won't have to reference it anymore. So really not a big deal. Then here you can also see some various tokens. That big green oval looking one in the background is basically a token that's given to the start player. It's called the advantage token. You have these square victory point tokens, and then these round activation tokens. The activation tokens are used by each player to activate certain abilities on their cards. And then finally we have all the cards. I believe there is 110 cards. And of course I put them all in sleeves because I really want this game to last. And then in the bottom of the box you can see it has the cover artwork on it as well, which is just a nice touch. Now there is an expansion for this game, which I have not yet played, and I'm looking forward to it, and I hope to be getting a copy soon. But this box, as you can see, is plenty big enough to fit the base game here and the expansion, which adds another 110 cards. Now this is the basic setup at the start of a game of GOSU, and you can see it is very quick and easy to set up. Each player is going to start by randomly determining who gets this advantage token, the start player token, and then each player is going to draw a hand of 7 cards. Now, the reason that the advantage token is good is that when there are ties, the advantage token will take precedence. And if both players, say, achieve victory at the same time, then the person with the advantage token will win. And also there are some card abilities that will give you an extra benefit if you control the advantage token. The only way for the advantage token to move between players is on card abilities that say so. Now that the players have their starting hand of 7 cards, they're going to take a look at them and make sure they have at least 1 level 1 goblin. And there are 3 levels of goblins, 1, 2, and 3, and you can see up here in the top left, it'll tell you in a Roman numeral what level they are. So here's a bunch of level 3s, I have at least 1 level 1, and then here's a couple level 2s. So if there is a case where you do not have any level 1 goblins, you just show them to your opponent. These go into the discard pile and you draw 7 new cards. And you can keep doing that until you have at least one level 1 goblin. Now what you're going to be doing in this game is attempting to build the most powerful goblin army. And what you're going to do is you are going to build up your army in levels. You have level 1, then level 2, and then level 3. And each level of your army can have up to 5 goblins in it. So here's kind of a picture from the manual that'll make sense. So you're going to arrange it in a matrix like that. So the whole purpose of the game is getting those goblins out of your hand and getting them onto the board. Both players are going to take turns doing one action at a time. When both players pass, that game round is over and a great battle is fought. The way the great battle works is you're going to add up the strength of all your goblins compared to the strength of all of your opponent's goblins, and whoever has the highest total strength is simply going to take a victory point chit. And the first to 3 is the winner. Also, the strength of the goblins is also very straightforward. It's this number down in the right. All level 3 goblins are going to be a strength of 5, all level 2s are a strength of 3, and all level 1s are a strength of 2. So, if you had all 15 spots filled up, you'd have a goblin army with a strength of 50. Now before I go over how to actually get goblins out of your hand and into your army, let's just go over what the pieces of the card are and the 5 different goblin army factions. So the first thing you'll notice at the top, of course, is the name. Then on the left here you have the symbol that corresponds to the particular faction of the goblin army. Here you have the level of the goblin army. Here you have the strength. Right here looks like a little gear with a yin-yang symbol. That is going to be the mutation value. If there's no number there, then they cannot mutate. So you can see this one here has a value of 3. So that could mutate. And then down here you have the action text. And now the text in here can be all sorts of things, and it can be triggered at all sorts of times, and we'll go over that in a minute. So this particular faction of the goblins are known as the ancient Goblins, and you can tell that by their symbol here, and because the card is a white color. Then the green is the alpha goblins. The black are the dark goblins. The blue are the mecha goblins. And finally, red are the fire goblins. And that's important in the sense that all the different factions have different strengths and weaknesses. And it's also important for how you get the goblins into your army. So let's go over that now. So the first thing that you need to do on your turn is play a level 1 goblin. And you're going to always play from left to right, filling your rows from left to right. So I'll start by playing this level 1 goblin here. And this is a level 1 Mecha Goblin. And this says, when Mecha Goblin Priest comes into play, take the advantage token. When Mecha Goblin Priest mutates, return to your hand an activation token played this round. So when he comes into play for free, because he's my very first card, then I'm going to take the advantage token. But in this case, I already have it. Now, any subsequent goblin that you play on your following turns, so after I play this guy, it's going to go to the next player, and it's going to come back to me. And any subsequent goblin that you play of the same faction is going to be free. So if I play another Mecha Goblin from my hand, assuming I have one, that will be free. And then you would obviously always take the action associated with the card. Now, in order to build a level 2 goblin, you must have an equal number or greater number of level 1 goblins for them to sit on top of. Like so. You can't just build a level 2 goblin by itself. You must have a level 1 goblin kind of as a foundation first. Okay? And in order to build a level 2 goblin, you must have a level 1 goblin of the same faction. So again, here's a Mecha Goblin. So on my turn, I could play this from my hand and take the associated ability with it. And just as you can expect, if you want to play a level 3 goblin, you must have a level 1 and a level 2 of the same faction in order to play that level 3. Now, let's say you want to have other factions and you don't just want to be tied down to one faction. Well, you can always play a different color faction under your level 1 if you so choose. So let's say I want to play this Fire Goblin, this Dark Goblin. I can play here as well. The catch is, though, when you play a faction that you don't already have, you must discard 2 cards from your hand as payment. So it kind of reminds me of San Juan in that respect. So now that I've played the Dark Goblin, I'll discard 2 cards from my hand. I now have a black Dark Goblin here, so any future level 1 Dark Goblins that I play are now free because I already have one out. I've already recruited him. And as you can expect, I can then now play level 2 Dark Goblins because I have level 1 ones. And they don't have to be lined up, they just have to exist in the row below them. And just as I was saying before, I can now play a level 3 Dark Goblin or a level 3 Mecha Goblin. And that's the basic way that you're going to be building up your army. And you're going to be taking these impulses back and forth with the other player until you can no longer or choose to not take any more turns. Then you're both going to pass, or after both people pass, that ends. You add up the strength of your army, and the most powerful army gets the 1 victory point. But of course it's not that simple, because all the cards are going to have lots of different abilities. So let's talk about mutations now. You can see Meow here has a mutation value of 3. So I can mutate him by discarding 3 cards from my hand, which reminds me a lot of San Juan. So let's say there's another card in my hand of the same level, in this case a level 2, that I want to bring out. So I'm going to discard 3 cards from my hand. 1, 2, 3. Discard Meow, who's evolving, so to speak, and I'm now bringing out a new level 2 creature from my hand. Now, if you've been paying attention, you realize, hey, I just stuck out a green zombie, or a green goblin, rather. And normally you cannot do that, because I don't have any green goblins in the level 1 of my army. But that is the exception to the rule. If you mutate a goblin, you can always mutate into a different faction color that you may or may not have down in your first row. The catch, though, is I cannot build a level 3 green goblin because I need to have green in the first and the second level before I can build the 3rd level. So you're kind of taking a trade-off. You're getting him out, but you can't play any more green goblins from your hand because you don't have any in level 1. You can't play level 3 because you don't have a level 1, but you can always mutate more out if you so wanted to. On the note of mutation, the Dark Goblins that are able to mutate, you can see have this yellow halo around their mutation symbol. And they have zombie mutation. So they follow the same mutation rules, but the zombie mutation means you can choose any card from the discard pile, and it's a community discard pile, to replace him with. So that's a really strong ability that you can use if the discard pile is filling up and getting full of great creatures. Now what about these activation tokens that I mentioned earlier? Well, the activation tokens are used to activate certain abilities on cards. And so let's take a look at this card here. This is Callum, and Callum has a little swirly symbol down in his text area, and it says trap 1+1 card. That swirly symbol means that it is an activatable ability. It doesn't happen when he comes out, it only happens when you spend an activation token on him. And this allows you to trap a card. So you can trap any card, either your own or an opponent's, and generally you'd want to trap your opponent's. And that means you can take one of their cards and flip it over. Once the card's flipped over, it doesn't count towards their army value. It's almost like it's not there, it's just taking up space. So if you, say, flipped over a level 1 card of theirs that happened to be the only goblin of a particular faction, now they can't play goblins of that same faction in the higher levels because they no longer have it in the original level. Now that's not to say if they already have goblins in the upper levels that they disappeared. No, they've already been recruited, they're now in the army, they're fine. But they now have to contend with the fact that this goblin is now no longer there. Now you'll also notice, I'm sure, that what is with that +1 in the parentheses? Well, if you have fewer victory points than your opponent, then you get to take advantage of the bonus actions. And those are those actions that are in the parentheses. So if I had fewer points than my opponent right now, I would actually get to trap 2 cards. Some other things to note is some cards have what are called overall effects. So here's a level 3 Goblin, a white Goblin here, who has an overall effect that says, during a round, the first player to pass draws 3 cards. So whenever this is out, the first player to pass in a game round gets to draw 3 cards, and that applies to all players. Here's another one that has an effect that is overarching, and it says, each time a card is trapped, you may draw 1 card. Now this doesn't say overall effect, so it doesn't apply to your opponent, it only applies to you. And you can see this yellow halo around the level to just remind you that this has an ongoing effect. And there's just a multitude of different abilities in the deck that you can do. And the majority of this game is going to be finessing more cards out into your army. And even if you can't get a more number of cards, you just want to be replacing cards as well, because there are some cards like this one, when they come out, they have some effect and then they don't do anything. So it may be in your best interest to mutate goblins, or if your lines are full, to kill them off and bring out new ones, because every time you bring out a new goblin that has an ability on it, that ability is going to trigger, and that's going to help you do more things and get hopefully more goblins out and draw more cards. Which brings me to another interesting aspect to this game, is after a round is finished, when both players pass and you fight a great battle, you don't draw more cards. You're still stuck with the cards that you started with. Hand management is very important in this game. And if you are really in dire straits and need cards, you can always cash in 1 activation token to draw 1 card, or cash in 2 activation tokens to draw 3 cards. So if you can't already tell, I really enjoy GOSU. It doesn't take a lot of setup, unlike other games like Dominion, which is really nice. You can just pull it out and just start playing. Everything comes from that community deck and the community discard pile, and you take those out, you take out a few tokens, and you hit the ground running. Another thing I really like about GOSU is the artwork that I mentioned earlier. And the really great thing is that almost every single card in the deck is unique. There are duplicates of every level 1 Goblin, but every level 2 and every level 3 Goblin is 100% unique, and that is really great because I love the colorful, whimsical, thematic artwork. Another great thing about this game is there is a tremendous amount of nuance in the different strategies that you can take. I've played a dozen games or so, many of them online, and there's a lot of different ways that you can take your army. You can go for brute force, you can go for attacking your opponent and killing off their cards to just reduce their strength. You can go for tactics that increase your deck size or your hand size a lot, because there's no hand limit, and therefore you can keep discarding lots of cards to mutate into new creatures and keep triggering abilities. There's just so many different things that you can do in GOSU, and all those different strategies make it a lot of fun and give it a ton of replayability. In addition, there is a lot of different card abilities, and I didn't really go over all of them, but there's abilities that trigger when the card comes out into play. There's abilities that trigger when cards mutate. There's abilities that trigger when cards are trapped, when cards are destroyed, when your opponent does certain things. You only have 2 activation tokens each round, and you're going to get those back at the end of each round after the great battle. So you have to use those very sparingly. There's a couple card abilities that will allow you to return activation tokens back to you, but mostly they're very scarce and you have to be very careful. And the aspect that you don't refill your hand or you don't redraw after the great battle, there's no reset of the board or anything like that, makes it that much more strategic, because you have to know when to pass and maybe take that loss to set you up better for the next round, or when to just go all out and just exhaust your total hand and hope for the best in the next round by maybe cashing in your activation tokens to draw more cards. So overall, I think GOSU is a fantastic card game. It's probably in my top 3 or top 5 of card games. Innovation is currently my favorite card game, but that has a lot of setup. And GOSU, you can just whip out and start playing, and it's online. So if I have a hankering, I'll just play it online and play a few games in 20, 35 minutes. So it's a lot of fun. So if you hadn't had the opportunity to play GOSU, go play it online, BoardGameArena.com. I'm not associated with them in any way. It's just where I like to go and play. And then pick yourself up a copy. And if you didn't know, there is an expansion, which I plan on getting soon, which adds a whole new set of faction cards and new goblins, new abilities, all sorts of fun new things. And there's actually a re-implementation of the game, a thing called GOSU 2 or GOSU Tactics that'll be coming out, which I think is a slight modification of this game. So you could take a look at that as well. So GOSU is a great game. The price is right. The artwork's fantastic. The game is fun, fast, furious. I really think it is worth checking out GOSU. Thanks for watching Left Hand Reviews.